Do we need to do this next one, or can we just go into our subtopic?
We're going to move into our subtopic. Okay, so in the last couple of days, to the excitement of many...
I'm so excited,
Not so much myself, because I didn't really pay attention the first time around, but
I did.
While we're on football, Vince McMahon announced that the XFL will be returning in 2020. For those of you who don't know, the XFL was an experiment done by Vince McMahon and others. Vince McMahon owns the WWE.
It was Vince McMahon and the former owner of NBC at the time. I forget his name.
And basically, it was a gimmick football league. It wasn't really real. Like, if you watch arena football, at least that's real football. The XFL was more like a show.
Yeah, any football league where people died, I don't think you could classify as like an actual football game. So it was wrestling based football,
and there were lots of cheerleaders.
There were so many cheerleaders. It was highly linked in. It debuted in 1999. I think it went maybe 1.5 seasons before it shut down. There were completely ridiculous rules. The way they determined who received and who kicked in the first half. They removed a ton of safety precautions. Guys got injured. But there were also some interesting things about the XFL when it debuted. Players could have custom jerseys. They could have... there was no extra point or touchback, which made... it made kickoffs more interesting in general. Because there was, like, every down or every touchdown, you had to go for 2. You had to make the next play. Fun fact, the Skycam in the NFL that fans have been demanding to see more of this year after they did a Thursday night game with it was actually an idea thought up by Vince McMahon for the XFL. The NFL adopted that when the XFL fell apart. There are aspects to this league, as ridiculous as it was, that has influenced the game of football. And I guess now it's also separated from wrestling currently. So Vince McMahon sold something like $300 million worth of his own shares in WWE to purchase and create a new company specifically designed to recreate the XFL.
Now, before we get into the details of the XFL, which we will get into, I, as always, am going to put my political spin on this story, which Jordan doesn't appreciate. Okay, so... everybody knows that Donald Trump has been extremely critical of the NFL, especially players kneeling and taking a stand for racial equality, among other things. Vince McMahon's wife also runs the Small Business Administration for the Donald Trump administration. They're directly related, and it's a little bit strange to me and others that in a year directly following immense criticism from the president, that Vince McMahon decides he's going to try to restart the XFL. Now, there are other reasons. The NFL has had 2 straight years of
dipping
ratings. Although I think it's still immensely popular and it's still like a money-making machine. So, it's certainly not going anywhere. But one of the things that came out with this league is that Vince McMahon alluded to in a pretty straightforward way that players will not be able to express their personal stance on the football field because they do not have a place, fans do not expect that from entertainment. Right. And I feel like a lot of fans of the NFL would disagree with Vince McMahon's statement that players should not be able to express their personal stance if they're affected.
Well, the majority, in fact. I mean, when you break it down, one of the reasons the NFL has been having ratings issues is because people have been protesting it because of the players protesting. So, whether you agree or disagree with the points of the protests, if you disagreed, you probably stopped watching the NFL, and that's why they had ratings dips. So, I mean, I get it. From a business perspective, you're basically saying to that specific demographic of people, these guys who play on these teams are going to show up, they're going to play football, they're going to leave. Period. And I get it, but again, I agree with you. I don't think it's something that the majority of people would agree with. If it were, the NFL would be doing way worse than it is.
And that just goes into the political side where it's like, why are we not focused on day one? Why is that being put out there?
Yes.
And it just seems like it's a political answer to the NFL, and that this league may be a political answer to the NFL.
Right.
But outside of that, here's what we know. The league will debut in 2020.
2 years to go, friends. Get ready.
It is the goal of Vince McMahon to have the games have a 2-hour runtime.
That's very fast-paced.
NFL's about 3.5 hours.
Yeah, ish, depending on timeouts.
They'd like to see 2-hour game runtimes. He said, any player with a criminal history will be barred from playing in the league, which excludes Johnny Manziel.
It excludes a lot of people. It excludes who's that other guy? Josh Gordon.
Right.
Josh Gordon is playing in the NFL. But
right.
The point
as is Pac-Man Jones. There'll be 8 teams in 8 different cities. They are currently looking for teams. The cities will be announced, and then team names will be announced. They'll have a 10-week season.
Now, for the 10-week season, is it going to be running parallel to the NFL or during the NFL's
I don't know
season?
that that's been announced, but I imagine that weather will dictate that it will have to probably run parallel. And I wonder if we'll see like a weeknight league.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because my thing is, if you're playing it smack in the middle of summer, depending on the cities that you pick, it may not necessarily. It could work out. You know what I mean? If it's 10 weeks and you're the only football on, people are gonna watch football. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, if the NFL's not on and the XFL is on, you're gonna be like, oh, word, let me just throw it on. And if it's like a decent game, you'll watch it.
And part of what I've read is it sounds like he's not necessarily worried about a cable deal. It sounds like he might be willing to go streaming service. And
Right.
It sounds like what he wants to do is set it up where, like you were talking with the Skycam, have more diverse angles and immerse people in the game, and kind of make it really an entertainment product as opposed to the NFL, which is a purely sports and it's a sports and entertainment product. But he wants to present the game differently.
Right.
So he did say it's going to be football. It's not going to be a gimmick league like it was before. It's not going to be, just all about cheerleaders and drama and everything else. It's going to be a real football league.
Playing the actual game of football.
Playing the actual game of football. I think it's just going to be potentially presented in a different way. That being said, we could have 2 football leagues running simultaneously. If the XFL is going to distinguish itself from the NFL, what are some things that you would like to see done differently?
I would like to see things that the NFL have taken away. Now, in fairness, before I even say it, this was the first year that the NFL re-allowed touchdown celebrations. But, that shouldn't have gone away in the first place. I do like the concept of no extra points period, or, no field goals. It's just go for it. You know what I mean? Everything is important.
Yep.
So you can't it's less defensive and more about moving the game forward with big offensive plays. So those electric plays that you love to see, you would see more of.
Yep.
I would like to see a variation of the rule book. I think some of the NFL's rules, a majority of them in fact, are archaic and outdated. But the problem with the NFL is that rather than take the time and resources to change them, they kind of just let it happen and then deal with the backlash. A living rule book would be nice.
Right.
Yep. And I mean, I like you said, I would like to see the camera angles, something more immersive to the game itself. You know what I mean?
Right.
If a play is getting ready to go, I don't want to be staring at a coach on the sideline. I don't care what he's possibly saying behind his playbook. Show me the play as it's getting ready. Let me see the lineup. Let me see if I can guess the defense's read. You know what I mean? It's so a better handling of what I'm looking at when I'm watching the game.
Right. I'd like to see, and this might sound terrible, but I'd like to see a rollback of some of the safety rules. The defenseless receiver rule, some of these other, kind of consequence of the game rules.
Yes.
There are speed plays in the NFL. There are crushing hits in the NFL that are just they're part of the game. And I think the XFL, being the XFL, has a chance to bring a little football back to football. And I know it sounds like a really awful thing to say, but I feel like there are guys out there who want to play the game hard and they want to play the game hard, period.
Yes.
They're playing the game because they love the game. And if a receiver is going to go up to get a ball, a defender wants to know, hey, I can make that hit. I can make that tackle.
Yes.
Because what we've seen in the NFL is players afraid to make hits, players afraid to make tackles, players have to worry while they're running full speed where their head might contact an opposing player if that player ducks at the last second.
Right.
And I think if you take some of that restriction off the gameplay, you might get a better product on the field. I'd like to see, I think the XFL has a really unique opportunity, like you said, to make just clearer rules.
Yes.
You must maintain possession through the ground, except if you're falling out of the back of the end zone and blah, blah, blah. Give me clear-cut rules.
Yes.
If the XFL can give me 8 good teams with exciting games, I don't care about the field goals or extra points. I like them. If they weren't there, I wouldn't miss them. If they are there, I don't care. but if you can make the game, if you can turn back the dial a couple of years, ratchet up the intensity a little bit, have a better rule book, and I think maybe play with the rosters. So they announced a 40-man roster. NFL's have 53, and I'm wondering if we'll see less players on the field. I wonder if you'll see 8, 9, or even 10, which is only one less, players on the field in different setups, because if you have 9 guys on the field, you can't run the same schemes as the NFL. You're going to have to reinvent the playbook.
Right.
And that could be interesting.
That would be really new. It would definitely be unique. It would be separate from both college and the NFL. And to go back to what you were just saying and to clarify, nobody ever wants to see somebody get hurt, like just for the sake of them getting hurt. But I'm inclined to agree with you, man. A lot of the safety rules, not necessarily the safety rules, but the consequences in penalties and fines and suspensions for incidental contact. I think one of the largest arguments going around in the NFL right now is hits on defenseless receivers and helmet-to-helmet contacts, because most of the time you see these guys getting fined tens of thousands of dollars, suspended for multiple games, and then you look at the clip and it's like he's running at least 20 miles per hour, and you're asking him to come to a dead stop from that speed simply because the player stumbled and his head went down. So now you're going to make helmet-to-helmet contact. It's unfortunate. You hope everybody makes it through okay. But to penalize somebody or suspend somebody, to punish them for incidental contact, you're not only taking away from the game of football, but you're changing how that position has to be played legally.
Right.
Which is wrong, in my opinion.
Right. And for example, in one of the last games of the regular season, Juju Smith-Schuster made an enormous block.
Yes.
On an opposing team's player. I forget what team. It was arguably a blindside hit, but it was a block. It wasn't his taunting after that was too much. But the play itself, you've got 2 players running at full speed. Smith-Schuster is running at a defender who's trying to make a tackle. He makes a block on the blind side. 2 weeks ago, during a Patriots game, I saw a very, very similar hit, and they said, "Oh, that's a great block."
Yes.
And it's like, why? Because the defender's head was turned a quarter turn further to the left?
Yep.
Because he might have caught him out of the corner of his eye. You cannot be focused on playing football and chasing a guy running 20 miles an hour and worried about, hey, is that guy's head turned 15 degrees further toward me? Can he see me? Is this going to be a blindside hit? You can't do it. And
Let me just do some quick math while I'm running full speed.
And I don't think players should be expected to. And I think, and this is my personal stance, and we kind of covered this on our concussion episode that we did a while back, sports inherently have personal risk. No one is playing hockey or football or basketball or soccer or tennis or golf and thinking that you're going to walk away uninjured.
I mean, maybe golf.
No, but you're going to pull a muscle in golf.
Like you could
or Tiger Woods has had back surgeries. Any type of physical action is going to have some type of risk involved. And if you are a pro athlete being paid millions of dollars, I think you've already accepted the fact that you're going to get hit hard.
Yep.
It doesn't matter what sport, you're going to get hit hard.
It's why each team has some of the best doctors. It's why they have incredible medical coverages. Like, come on.
If you're in tennis, you're going to blow a knee, or you're going to have tendon problems in your elbow. Like, there are inherent risks in everything. So we need to stop, I personally think, trying to put everybody in bubble wrap and throw them out on the field. Let these guys play the game that they're being paid to play. Now, the XFL, who knows what these guys are going to make? We're going to have probably a lot of NFL rejects or college rejects. They're not going to be making the money as much money as the NFL. Should they be put in a less safe environment? That might be an argument.
I think it's a difference between a less safe environment and a more football-like game at its core. It's going to sound like an awful thing to say, but the truth of the matter is there is entertainment value in physicality. It's why people watch boxing. It's why people watch the UFC. Like, it's just the way it is. So when you have a game that is a full contact sport like football, and then you reel back on every contact penalty, and you start charging these people money for it, it's going to become less entertaining because there's less important plays. There's nobody wrestling for an interception anymore.
Right.
There's nobody knocking a ball loose on a really impressive catch. Like, if if the defenseless receiver rule doesn't exist in the NFL, that cornerback for the Saints gets Stephon Diggs while he's in the air, that game doesn't end the way it ends. You know what I mean?
Right.
But because he's in the air, if he lay hands on him, it's a penalty and a time stop. So you're guaranteed a field goal. It's annoying, and I think it'll be interesting to see if the XFL can do it differently without risking too much safety.
Well, and here's the thing, the NFL has been under scrutiny because they don't provide retired players with medical care, follow-up treatment, or really good health care to help them through things like CTE.
Yep.
If the XFL from the start was like, hey, you guys are playing a dangerous game, we're going to cover you, it'll be a tough thing to do, but they could set the example, and that will attract players.
It would, and it would be a bold move, but I don't think it's something you can expect to see. It is completely separate from wrestling, but Vince McMahon is going to be the owner of the XFL and was at one time the sole owner of wrestling. Athletic wrestlers for the WWE are not under contracts like you would think. They're contracted employees, you know what I mean? Or they're like contractors. Right? So their coverages aren't that great, like their medical, their dental, and whatnot. It reads in a way that is very favorable to the company at the expense of the person themselves. It's all legal, but it's not something that's like, we've got you covered because we understand you can get seriously hurt out there.
Right.
And so I think I would not be surprised if that were similar for the players because it would mimic the NFL and the wrestling world. But yeah, if they do it, it's a huge game changer for a lot of things.
That's something I like to see. We'll post over the course of the week. We'll ask you guys what you'd like to see from the XFL, and you can weigh in with your own comments and opinions. And as news progresses, keep us informed on what you hear.